Well, hey there, guys. How's it going today? Can everyone hear me okay? Because I can see that you're all here in the room. Thanks for joining me tonight. So, I got this idea to do this live stream from, it was Mick the Pickle from Australia. He wrote, we were tweeting about this conference that I went to yesterday in Bailey, Colorado. And Mick said, we were going back and sharing some of the slides, and I just want to talk about tonight some of the presentations, what I learned and so forth. And Mick said, hey, why don't you do a live stream about this? So I thought, great, thanks, Jules. I thought, why don't we just do it tonight while it's fresh in my mind? I just drove back from Bailey, and it's all really fresh. I thought this is a good time to do it. And so I want to share, some of this research into Bigfoot, Sasquatch. This is really interesting stuff, and it's pretty new to me. Look, I've been studying, researching, practicing RV since the late 90s. Then UFO witnesses started coming forward, and more of them kind of became a book. And crop circles. And some of you are probably wondering, why Bigfoot? Some people already write to me, why do you study so many different topics? Simeon, why don't you just stick to one topic? Okay. So, guys, I am sticking to one topic. It's called parallel realities, okay? For me, all of these have to do with evidence for parallel realities, multiverses. We've talked about this before. Hugh Everett, the many worlds interpretation, many interacting worlds model, the newer version. So, I see these as extensions of the same topic, and of course cold fusion and evos. We're learning a ton from Bob Greenyer and the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project, Quantum Heat. I hope you guys have a chance to check out Bob Greenyer's YouTube live streams that he's doing so many times a week now about micro ball lightning, coherent matter, and how this all links up to cold fusion, linear, Tesla, ball lightning, and these other topics. So the idea is that these are all connected, and you're here, and we're all here figuring this out together. Bob Greenyer, by the way, is just doing a super job looking at evidence going all the way back to Nikola Tesla for coherent matter waves, magnetic monopoles, ball lightning, how it's all connected to low energy nuclear reaction, cold fusion, balls of light. We've seen them around crop circles. They've been seen around UFOs. And as we heard, I'll get to in a moment, they're seen around Bigfoot too. Does that give you a clue what's going on here? Now, what we're discovering really briefly from Bob Greenyer is that There's a whole line of research going back 100 years from Tesla on forward. People have been looking into these topics and we've been forgetting about it. And as you know, history is written by those who write the history. They've been leaving out all these researchers like John Hutchinson since Tesla, Kenneth Shoulders, and many others. And Grenier is showing us that research in Japan, in Russia, has found secondary types of electrical current that relate to all these topics. So the point is that these topics are related. There's another version of history that we just weren't taught. It's not like it's a parallel reality. I know it seems that way, but the work that Tesla did has continued through many different people, and we really haven't learned much about it. It's been kind of erased from history. Not only were Tesla's trunks of papers missing after he died, but we forgot about all this. That's why this matters. So what I'm attempting to show you with my YouTube channel, what I do here, and the classes that I teach, these are connected phenomena. There are other properties of reality around coherent states of matter that create phenomena that we've called paranormal, but they are most likely, now you don't have to agree with me, but in my view, this is a new science it's an old science, but we're rediscovering it. So that's how this all works, and it is connected to Bigfoot, as I'm about to show you. So anyway, we've got a lot of people in the room tonight. Thanks for being here. We've got Red Panda, Case for Infinity, Kronos, Eagle Dawn, Jules. Hey there, Misha. Glad to have you all here. Now, listen, if you want to call in tonight while I'm talking, I just don't always like to be the only one talking, even though that's how it works. It's nice to have other people on your live stream. If you want to call me while I'm communicating and just talk about any of this, you can call me. This is my business number, 415-413-8052. Just feel free to, and I'll answer it. You can ask questions instead of just doing it through chat. So that option is available to you to make it a little more interactive. So this conference I just attended was yesterday. It was the Sasquatch 2021 conference. It featured many different Sasquatch researchers, including a person I had never heard of before, Igor Burtsev. He's a Russian researcher that has been doing this for over 50 years because Russia and the former Soviet Union territories, as he told us, all the way over from Kamchatka through Siberia over to the more western side of the former Soviet Union, is filled with Sasquatch encounters. For real. And they are the same types of encounters that we have here. Exactly the same. It's the same phenomena. And he gave us about 2 hours of presentation, and I got a chance to talk to him several times during the breaks. He actually has a PhD in political science, and he had been teaching around the world, but he became fascinated by this Bigfoot research, and he showed us slides and pictures from all over the world, United States and Russia and the former territories of the Soviet Union. And what he showed us, he actually also analyzed the Patterson-Gimlin footage, from 1968, that shows that big creature called Patty walking through part of Northern California, where Gimlin and Patterson went to look for a Bigfoot, which is still one of the best films that we have. And he determined, looking at all possibilities of that film, that this was a real thing. Now, just briefly, how did I get interested in this, folks? And I'll get to your questions in a bit later. I got interested in this because here, let me see if I can bring this on the screen. I went coming back from Sedona a couple years ago for a channeling session from Bashar. We stopped at this. Just had this going through Bailey. Stop for gas. I just had this feeling. I've never seen this other side of Bailey. Let's go down this other street. It's not very big. And there was the Sasquatch outpost. Now, a friend of mine here in Boulder had said that there was a Sasquatch museum up there. And this isn't something that ever crossed my radar before. I've never seen Sasquatch. I've never heard vocalizations out in the woods. And I've spent a lot of time hiking everywhere I've ever been. I've never seen a tree structure. None of this has ever been something I've personally encountered that I can remember. But I just thought, so, for me, now, let's take an example. We've had Jules on the channel here. She and her husband, Noel, told us about their encounters. Jules actually had an encounter with a Sasquatch as a kid in Indiana. That's a real encounter that someone had. And you can go back to the YouTube channel and listen to Jules' description about this. And then a sort of a gifting experience in Alabama. This goes back a long way, by the way, a long ways. This idea that there's this gifting relationship between humans and these Bigfoot. I haven't had any encounters like that. I got interested because of this museum. Let me see if I can just show you. Yeah, okay, so let me see if I can show you the screen here. Yeah, so can you see that on the screen? Yeah. Yeah, sure. Oh, here it is. 415-413-8052. Don't call right. Let me just introduce what we'll talk about. I'll give you some summaries and we can talk at the end. But this is the number, yeah. So this is my business line. And so we went by this museum and I went in to look at it, and I was astounded to find that there were actually encounters right in this area. I was surprised to find Bigfoot encounters not too far away from where I live, right here in downtown Boulder. And this was really a surprise to me. I mean, I've encountered UFO witnesses from all over the world, interviewed them, put the videos up on the Black Swan Ghost channel, wrote the book about it, Black Swan Ghost. And I know, as you do, people are having experiences that they are not talking about. They're not talking about it for a number of reasons. They're either afraid of the stigma or being ostracized for having a 8052. 8052. That's a little Sasquatch 8 there. You see it's braided. So, people don't talk about their experiences for a variety of reasons. They're afraid of how people are going to react. Or it was frightening and they don't want to remember it, or they repress the memory. There's a variety of reasons. I knew this was happening with UFO witnesses because some of the experiences are awfully strange. Sometimes they're disturbing, sometimes they're friendly. And people have a variety of reasons for not talking about it. And I realized, by the way, this goes back to my grandmother on my father's side, who had to flee Nazi Germany in the 1930s, late 30s, before the Nazis were going to put them in concentration camps. It was getting increasingly violent for Jewish people in Germany in the 1930s, and they stayed there for quite a while. Talking to her for several days during college, doing an oral history project, I realized that people who've been in stressful experiences they never share them unless you really sit them down and say, okay, I'm listening. We're turning on the tape recorder, and we're going to just what happened, tell us your story. I realized from my talking to my grandmother, she had never told me some of these stories, what it's like to be in a country that gets increasingly authoritarian, increasingly racist, and deadly. She just never shared this around the dinner table. She had a lot of stories to tell me. Okay, so I realized this was true with UFO witnesses. As you saw some of the people I interviewed in Black Swan Ghost, those people had never really told anyone these stories. Like Louise Voves, I have her on, go to blackswanghosts.com. You can just look at the videos for free. They're right up there. The interviews with these witnesses. These people have a lot of stories to tell, as you can see. They've never really told anyone before. It's, you go up to them. You guys can do this too with your family members or people that have had experiences, and you just sit down and you listen, and they will tell you things that they may have never talked about before. And so let me start putting in some of your comments here. It's good. I'll try to talk at the same time. So the thing is that it's true with the Bigfoot stories too. When I started reading about this, and these are just some photos in the Sasquatch outpost in Bailey, Colorado. You should go visit it if you ever come through Colorado. That this is true about these reports too. It'd been happening around here. It happens all over the United States. And this goes back a long ways. Many indigenous peoples talk about whatever their words for the Sasquatch is. We found out in Russia from Igor Bortsev, they're called the Leshy, the forest people. And these go back a long time, but it's kind of like the analogy I said before with all this Tesla technology. It gets suppressed and then it gets forgotten. And I think that this got forgotten in our history too, because indigenous peoples in the U.S. and everywhere have had encounters with these creatures, and they look sort of different. Many different types. In any case, what I'm attempting to tell you is that reading stories, I realized that this creature had been seen on hiking trails that I had been on many times throughout my life in Glacier National Park, Yellowstone National Park, around here in Colorado. Again, I haven't seen a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch personally that I can remember. But these stories I've been reading, some of them have been in books by Tom Lyons. He had a book about encounters in Glacier National Park with stories from park rangers who had encounters with these Bigfoot. They've never talked about it before. If these stories are true, they just sent them to him. He's a known author. I guess that's his pseudonym. But, he had his own experiences, encouraged people to write him. Kind of like I did with Black Swan Ghosts. I just sort of collected the stories. So, if these stories are real, essentially what we have, folks, here, and this is the point, it's a kind of a hidden history, just like UFOs. Now, I don't want to claim to be a Bigfoot expert anyway. It's just something I've started to look at in the similarity that people who have experiences with these sorts of phenomena often don't tell anyone. And as we learned from Terry Lovelace in interviewing him recently, with his experience in Devil's Den, Arkansas, sometimes you don't even talk about it with the people who you experienced it with, because it's still very hard to talk about. So, in essence, what we've got is a situation where there are things that could be true that we haven't heard about. It's not only UFO, ET encounters. It can be encounters with these Sasquatch, and it's not like it's a totally separate topic. Now, let me tell you something about the debate that goes on. You're probably aware of this, but just to sum it up. There are some researchers that say, yes, this is real, but it's a type of unknown forest ape, that has undiscovered type of, forest, what do they call it? An undiscovered type of ape or gorilla in North America. That is one point of view. Then the other point of view is that it's an undiscovered type of human. The undiscovered type of human says it's a Gigantopithecus. Oh, no, that's a type of ape. Excuse me. It's a giant ape, the Gigantopithecus. The human idea is that it's a type of Neanderthal. And then there's this other sort of view that what we're dealing with here is something interdimensional, sort of the quantum Bigfoot idea. So that's sort of what this conference was about. It started out by Igor Bortsev, and let me just show you his picture here. This is Igor Bortsev on the right, who came over from Russia just for this presentation. And the guy on the left is Don Monroe, who has been, we'll talk about him, looking into horsehair braiding. Now, he has been all over the United States, and we talked about where the Bigfoot are, and he described what it's like to encounter them and so forth. But Igor Bortsev, to just start with him, he gave us a very interesting presentation, and it had to do with all these, and this is really interesting. It had to do with all these different phenomena that we see around these Bigfoot. He started by telling us, let me see if I can get the photo up here. He started by telling us about, just different ideas of what Sasquatch is. Now, this guy is sort of a trained, social scientist. He went back to looking at, biology from 1700s. And back then, biologists were talking about Homo sapiens and Homo troglodytes. Homo sapiens meaning the sort of quick humans, and then there were the kind of slower humans that were considered more muscular, the forest creatures. And so he believed that people have been aware of these Bigfoot for quite a while. And he showed us different aspects of this phenomena. He's been investigating, look at this, since the 50s, and all these different mountain ranges in Russia and other neighboring countries to Russia. He's been doing this for absolutely 4 decades. And he had, I think, his niece who's an artist, draw pictures of different encounters that people have had in Russia and the neighboring countries there. And this was really fascinating because it's just like our encounters. People are out there and all of a sudden they see these hairy hands coming through the bushes or something. Different people that have been discovered that they're not sure if they're a type of Bigfoot or some sort of interbreeding between Bigfoot and humans. This is Zena, a woman that was discovered in the forest quite a while ago in Russia. It's sort of like, is Bigfoot a type of undiscovered human, right? That's how Igor started his presentation. And I thought it was going to go in the direction of that this is a type of undiscovered forest human, forest people, the wild men, which all cultures talk about. And then he went through all the evidence of the horse mane braiding, which is a phenomenon that's been seen all around the world. This sort of inexplicable braiding of horses' manes very finely sometimes, which seems hard to explain, and it often happens in areas where Bigfoot are sighted. So the horse mane braiding, in fact, Don Monroe, who gave us the talk afterwards, has a whole book, which I'll just show you in a moment, about horsehair braiding. So is this something that you guys have ever encountered before? I mean, some characteristics of this interaction between us and the Sasquatch is that they like to braid things. And apparently even there's evidence in the Patterson-Gimlin film, which I'll show you in a moment, that female had some braids on her hair. So, okay, it's a little hard to see. Keep in mind, I'm taking photos of a screen. So, I'll show you some little more pictures a little afterwards. Then we got into the tree structures. Now, some of us had a discussion on Twitter last night about these tree structures. I have never seen any of these myself. I've been in the forest a lot. When I first see something like this, I'm thinking wind or something like that. And we had some discussion about this on Twitter last night when I shared some of this. This is just another aspect of the phenomenon. I will say that these tree structures are seen where Bigfoot are seen. This isn't just some random thing. They're seen where the Bigfoot are seen, where there's no other trees knocked down, just a bunch of them in very geometrical patterns. And let's show another example. Sometimes they're very intricate, where one tree is put in upside down, then another is bent over, and then they're tied in very interesting ways in very remote areas where Bigfoot have been seen. So this is kind of an aspect of the phenomenon that's just kind of interesting. And Bigfoot have been seen moving 1,000-pound tree logs. It's in one of Tom Lyon's book from a fire watcher in Glacier National Park, where they moved a 1,000-pound tree against his patio so they could get up and look in the window at him, which scared the heck out of him, and he got out of there as soon as he could. He had a really bad feeling about it, and he left early when the light showed up. So people have seen them move around large structures. Anyway, it's just another aspect of the phenomena that is seen around the phenomena, and it has this grass. You can see in this photo, the grass is wound around the branches, and the other one is tied down. It's just really interesting stuff. And again, the way I like to look at this data is it's sort of like Stanton Friedman used to say, it's kind of the gray basket. You don't really know, but if there was something out there that we weren't that familiar with, maybe it would have other ways of marking its territory or signaling or communicating. And this is what we were saying last night. So I do agree. Linda has a very interesting comment here, which is a big part of it, which is this is what came up at the conference, is we've sort of been cut off from nature, from natural reality. We're in this kind of industrialized civilization, and is it really too far to think that we might have forgotten what's out there? It's quite possible. I mean, it only takes a couple generations to lose knowledge, right? Hey, what happened over there? It only takes a couple generations to lose knowledge, and perhaps that's what happened in this case. So that's, I think, Linda, I think that's a good point, and that's what people are saying, is that in being cut off, we might have forgotten some of the life forms that were around. We've had this industrialized school system for several hundred years, and it's very kind of limited sort of material that we learn. Is kind of left brain logical thinking. Hello, RV. We know that from RV that. So Linda's also saying here something interesting, that there's this gifting phenomenon. We alluded to that in Jules with her case of finding a plumber's wrench, right, Jules? Just what she needed. And there it is in the driveway in a very remote area in Alabama. This is the right size. This has been reported so many times that you leave them things. Now, what Igor Bortsev said at the end was very interesting, is that before Christianity, like 2,000 years ago, people would leave food and gifts for the wild people of the forests. It was something that we did. And then Christianity came along, and other religions, I'm sure any monotheistic religions were the same, and said this is sort of demonic or something. So we stopped leaving gifts. Maybe that's why we forgot about this. But this is something that people report, is that they leave gifts, and then the Sasquatch will leave something woven. There's pictures in these books of these hand baskets and things. Hey, where's my little... Okay, so, sorry, I'm getting the handle on this video system here. I'm going to find my window again, 1 second. Well, let's go back to... Yes, okay. So, the idea is that we have forgotten about some of that, and yeah, so the braids are kind of an aspect of this phenomena, and I'll get into another aspect of it just in a second. So this is what Igor Bortsev said, is this is something that we might have forgotten for a couple thousand years. And again, going back to what Bob Greenier's been talking about with cold fusion, he's suggesting that every civilization in the past knew about cold fusion lunar and these coherent matter, and that they were able to use it to build stone structures, right? Pyramids and things that are really heavy because it creates a kind of anti-gravity force, type of levitation, and that we're the ones that got dumbed down by forgetting how to do this. It could apply to many other phenomena as well. So, so here's what's really interesting to me, folks, about Igor's lecture at the end, is that he talked about paranormal aspects of Bigfoot. Yeah, I'll get back to some of these comments. These are really good comments about the different toe structures. So this is what's really interesting about Igor's presentation. I thought he was just going to go in the direction of it being an undiscovered humanoid. Here's a picture, by the way, of these upside down tree trunks and logs that are, like 1.5 feet in the ground. Now, I don't think any hurricane's going to do that unless you see all the other trees knocked down. But these were sort of interesting. But I thought he was leaning in the direction of just being sort of an anthropological, biological explanation, like an undiscovered type of human or undiscovered type of ape, the Gigantopithecus and all this. But that's not the direction that he went in. He went into the direction of, oh, by the way, they have been seen on stone structures too, these same sort of patterns where the Bigfoot have been seen. There have been carvings in stone and very interesting patterns. I know you can't see that well, but it's really interesting to think about. Have you ever been in the forest and seen a carved stone that might have a map on it or something in a kind of a rough sort of etching? I haven't, but this is what's been reported. I'm not saying that you should necessarily believe that all that this is. Obviously, as someone who's been around crop circle phenomena, I can tell you people want to include everything into their explanation. But you need to keep an open mind at the same time. It's a tricky balancing act. When you're dealing with new evidence, you should keep an open mind, but also look at it somewhat skeptically too. But this is just what's being presented. Here's where it started to get interesting. You can see Igor in the back there in this in this picture. I'm only showing a fraction of the photos that were shown here. A woman saw this very tall Sasquatch approach her in her garden. It was, she said, Igor showing how high it would be. There was a telephone pole behind. So it would have been about 8 feet. She would have been standing here. It took one step towards her. And then what she said was a sparkly curtain came down from the head. Sparkly curtain. And as it descended from the creature's head, the creature became invisible. That's when I started really paying attention to this. She said it vanished in front of her eyes. Now, this has been reported many times. And the more you read about this, the more you read about different phenomena that Sasquatch can manifest. So we're obviously, this is my point. We're not just dealing with, and this is the point of the conference, we're not just dealing with it's called flesh and blood hypothesis, or just a physical undiscovered forest ape that's very elusive. or you wouldn't be having these invisibility effects that have been reported many times. If you start reading about this, you start hearing that these Bigfoot can change into other things. There was a person after Igor that talked about seeing one come out of a ball of light. For real, he had the photo of the ball of light. Now, I have to tell you, folks, this would have been something that even myself would find hard to believe until recently. We all have our boggle point, where it gets to the point where you almost can't separate it out in your mind from someone, what you think might be a fantasy. But I've read too many cases of this now, of the Sasquatch being sort of shapeshifters, right? Being seen around balls of light, coming out of balls of light, going into balls of light, throwing balls of light. There's even a story of someone who attempted to shoot at one. It didn't do anything to the Bigfoot, and it threw a ball of light back at this hunter. Okay? So any case, I'm just going to star some of these comments here. So anyway, it's very complex phenomena, and so when he started getting into these paranormal phenomena, that's when I really started paying attention to this. This was a picture of an artist who had served in Afghanistan with the Soviet forces. Remember when that all started in the late 80s? The Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. Well, this is someone who was with the Soviet armed forces, and he encountered one of these creatures near where he lived in some very rural area in Russia, and became friends with them. And he actually created this carving, and you can't see it, but the Bigfoot, he said, made a scratch on top of it to add its own little mark onto it. And he's a very good artist, and this creature had a name. I think it's Taban or something like this. And I don't have the picture there, but he got to meet the whole creature's family. It was a large family out there. So again, it sounds kind of... Oh, here it is. This is the picture of his... See how small he is sitting there? And this is the big dad with the kids and the mom around. I mean, you would think, what's going on here? But this is what people have reported, even in the United States, is meeting these Sasquatch families or being taken out to the woods to meet them. Very, very complex. This is very complex, and I certainly don't want to be one to say this is how it is exactly. I'm just presenting some of the evidence. As Jules is saying here in the comments, yeah, I like that. It's really mind-boggling. It's really mind-boggling. It's very easy to dismiss this, but when you hear it from so many witnesses, you start to... I start to pay attention when, you look at their sincerity. Apparently, by the way, Bigfoot like to play with our cars and tractors and things. They're kind of like toys. There have been reports of this. If you do your research, they like to toss these vehicles around, according to what I've been reading. So it's happened here in Colorado, by the way. So this was very interesting. You've seen the footprints. We got to see lots of examples of these really large footprints, 18 inches across and so forth. Let's see. There was another case. Igor showed us something very interesting. You can't quite see it here, but they had night vision set up around their tent, and something showed up right behind the tent that you could see. They couldn't see it, but when you look at the night vision, there's something there. Right behind there. See it? For quite a while. So this was... let's go back. So it's very interesting just to hear these reports. Now, how do I deal with this, folks? When I hear new information like this, I don't always just believe it because the person said it. And it's not because I think that they're hoaxing or anything. I just want to hear a lot of the information, and I want to see if it explains the other information, how it links with what other people have said. And I'd use Stanton Friedman's gray basket. I'm not saying you have to do that, but it means you don't have to believe or not believe. You can just say it's a possibility. That's how I deal with these reports. But it's very interesting, the consistency between here and these Russian cases. So Igor Bortsev ended up telling us that it's just, there's so many what he called paranormal aspects to Bigfoot that what it's most likely is an interdimensional type of human. For real. An interdimensional type of human that still exists, that can become invisible and perhaps go into parallel realities, come back to parallel realities. Now, the thing that makes it challenging is, why are they so physical here? And perhaps when they're here in our reality, they're just as physical as you and me. And then when we go off to other realities, we're physical there. They've been seen chasing deer, chasing elk. They're faster than deer. They catch them. They eat them raw. Okay, they're hunters. So that's what they do in our reality. And they seem to be, in my interpretation, a type of human that we're probably descended from. In other words, that we lost some of their abilities, the telepathy, the shape-shifting, some of their natural psychic abilities that they can, apparently people say you can, they've heard, when they're around them, they talk telepathically, just like we hear with ETs. Again, I'm not saying I completely understand this, hardly. I just think it's very interesting, and the witness testimony is extensive. And that is something to pay attention to. Now, here's another interesting thing that happened while I was there. I am sitting there talking to some people about sightings here. There was a sighting in Drake, Colorado, which I tweeted about just a little while ago, earlier today, where this woman said that she heard the sound. She's going up to look at this cabin. She hears a sound. She all of a sudden becomes disoriented. She takes a photo. And I was sitting right next to them on the bench during the lunch break. What a coincidence, huh? Mike and Leah. And they were right there. And he said, yeah, I'm the guy that took that. I couldn't believe it. This is one of the best cases in this area in a long time. And this is really gold for me, because here you have the witnesses right there. You can talk to them. You can get a feel for who they are. You can ask them questions. And I did get to talk to let's see if I can get her photo here. Yeah, Mike and Leah. And I said, what do you mean by zapped by infrasound? Where did you get that idea from? The story goes, this is what is on the BFRO website, by the way. You can look at it. I tweeted it a little while ago. I hope you can see that. This is on the brfo.net website. Sighting near Drake, Colorado. And Thursday, May 30th. Submitted it in 2019. So the story goes that they were... let me just lower that window. So Leah and Mike were going to... You can read it on the website, but I got more information from talking to them directly. I could immediately see they're authentic. These were not people that make things up. They were serious. Absolutely serious about this sighting. They were going to look after a friend's cabin. The friends were from Florida. They don't visit that often. Curiously enough, they said they had heard screaming sounds at night. They thought it was some wild animal, but it happened a lot. Occasionally, and they said, what kind of animal is that makes those whooping and screaming sounds? And Leah goes back. They go up to the cabin to check just to make sure it's okay, and she hears what she sounds like kids playing in the backyard. So Leah walks back. Mike stays in the car. and she goes like 100 yards down the path, and she excuse me, she let me see if I have it here. Okay, let me go back to the BFO site. She sees this. Do you see that on your screen? She takes some pictures, and then her phone dies, and she feels disoriented. That's what she told me, for a day and a half afterwards. All of a sudden, the camera dies. She just feels dazed, disoriented. Phone stops working. She has a walkie-talkie, but the only way she can get back to the car is her husband knocks sticks together. That's how disoriented she was. Now, if you can see, there really is a shape of something here. Can you see that on your screen? You can see the eyes, what's called the sagittal crest here, eyebrows. Look at the nose here, the body. Now, Leah and Mike were telling me they think in this photo there might be other Sasquatch. By the way, this is 8 feet off the ground. They came back later to measure how high it is in this tree. By the way, this is what Colorado looks like. Do you see this guy holding up a hat to recreate it? That's 8 feet off the ground. Here he is, and he's holding up a hat that high to get... That's how tall that creature has to be. So there is what really could be one of the best pictures you've ever had of a Sasquatch, right there. And possibly some other ones. I didn't see it, but Mike said when we looked, Leah said it could be there were baby squatches running around. That's what was making the sound. It's really hard to see. I'm not sure I can make it any better, but go to the site. Guys, if you go to the BFRO site and look for Colorado sightings, you can see it. It's a very good, really looks like a big creature. Again, very high off the ground. It's really fascinating stuff. So, so that was an interesting coincidence. And so this is the thing, folks. I guess we all haven't been to conferences in a while, right? Because of COVID, we've been attending these Zoom conferences. So this was my first conference in a long time because I've gone to so many, and then we've just been doing things by Zoom. Even this upcoming Contact in the Desert, where I've created some presentations for you, along with the other presenters. It's just a virtual conference, which is cool in some ways too. You can watch it, and I Contact in the Desert over 2 weeks. But the thing about live conferences is you get to mingle with people, and here I'm sitting right next to the people with this incident that I've been wondering about for months, the Drake, Colorado incident of 2019. Oh, thanks a lot. Thanks for Super Chat. So, you get to meet people and talk to them, and you get to kind of gauge, I'm talking about, gauge their authenticity. It's not like you're suspicious of them, but you don't know who these people are who create these reports. And I've encountered hoax things occasionally in researching different topics like this. It happens once in a while, as far as I'm concerned. No doubt about it. But it's just meeting people is something that you do at a live conference. Now, here's the drawback of a live conference, though. You're sitting for a long time, right? Zoom conferences, there's breaks, and you can move around. You're in your house, and you can get a snack. It's challenging to sit there for a long time. But there's also something about the immediacy which I think is really beneficial. Anyway, meeting Mike and Leah was really cool, and it just confirmed to me that really happened to them. These are real witnesses. I didn't have a shred. In any case, that was one cool thing that happened. So let me show you just some other presenters that I thought were really interesting while we're talking here. We'll get to the flag in a second. This was Don Monroe, and he talked about this horsehair braiding phenomena. Now, this guy has been investigating this for a long time, and you won't believe what he told me. he said the highest concentration he knows of Sasquatch are in, believe it or not, Nebraska. Why Nebraska? Tons of cornfields, grain crops. I said, Nebraska, it's just big and flat, not far. He goes, no, there's these rivers that go through it with forests around them, tons of deer, otter, and beaver for them to eat. And they can go undetected, and they just run through the rivers there. He said that's where he's seen them. He spent 3 years in Nebraska just for this. Wrote this very cool book, which I got a copy of. The Braided Horses Are Coming. Now, Jules and I were talking about this last night a little bit. This, again, this is just another phenomena that where people have encountered braided horse manes. I don't totally know what to make of it, folks. This is still very new to me. But people say it happens overnight and they can't explain it any other way. And again, Igor Burtsov talked about it in, look at that, in Russia happening. It happens all over. Now, I imagine there's some counter explanations. It's always good to consider those. I'm not against counter explanations. I mean, it's our job to look through all this data with a kind of sense of discernment, right? But I really doubt what would do that naturally. I mean, wind. I don't think so. Sasquatch. I'm just presenting this evidence to you. You can do your research and make your mind up yourself. They like to seem to braid trees, to braid horse manes. They like to braid things. They're good with, even though their hands are huge, they're very detailed, and they braid horses' manes down to look at this. Really fine level. So this is something that is a part of the phenomena, and maybe some of you have experienced this. I don't know. So this is another aspect of it, that people who have Sasquatch encounters around their homes. Now, let me tell you something, folks. What it turns out is that people who are having Sasquatch encounters click full screen. I will try to do that. This is still sort of new for me to use this platform. Full screen. Yeah, I'll try to do that if I show some of the other photos. People who have Sasquatch encounters often don't talk about it. They like to have these relationships with Sasquatch. It feels special. I mean, Jules, you kind of related that to us when you discovered the plumber's wrench, right? In your, it feels like someone's, you're having a relationship with them. They're helping you. They're gifting. You're giving something to them. They're giving something back. People don't always talk about these relationships. They can go on for decades, apparently. So it's sort of, again, like a black swan ghost phenomena. This could be going on and people aren't talking about it. That's my view. I'm going to stand behind that view, that there's a lot more to reality than people talk about because it's so complex. But we're living in a time where all this information is coming out. Why don't we just go for it, right? So that was Don Monroe. Very interesting to talk to this guy. He lives in Lima, Montana. He has his address in here. You can write to him. His idea was more that Bigfoot are a type of, persons that became feral. I don't know if that's true, but he suggested to me that Chief Napa of a Native American tribe in the Idaho area was actually a Bigfoot. So, because he had to ride two horses, he was so big he had to have two horses. So let me give you another aspect of it. I ran into a guy who lived in that Bailey area. He was a little reluctant to be identified. And he said to me, he worked in search and rescue in the Bailey area. People get lost, get in trouble. He would go up there. There's a lot of forest around there. He would, let me just show you what it looks like there. Where is the full screen? How do I make this full screen? Well, this is what the Bailey area looks like, okay? You can kind of see this is a shot from this the Airbnb I stayed in, okay? It's extremely rugged looking. This guy told me he came across footprints once in the snow that were 18 inches. There's a lot of sightings around this area. All over this area. You can almost feel it. That's what I believe. I was hiking around there just today after the conference. And a memory came back to him, he said. He said a memory from Dallas. And Dallas, Texas. As a teenager, he said, in city limits between a southwestern part, just the edge of Dallas, between a ranch and a game preserve, he was out walking one night at 10 p.m. and he saw something that he thought was a cow in a ditch, and then it stood up and it was 8 feet tall. And that he had repressed that memory the whole time until he saw the footprints in Bailey one time in the snow. So another aspect of this is that people may be repressing the memories. In other words, things that don't fit our social consensus, there's a lot of reasons why you might not talk about it. And another reason is it just might be so scary. You might feel that it's scary. You repress the memory. It's possible. And this is what he told me. So I'm kind of wondering whether this is happening with these Bigfoot encounters. So, thanks for the super chat. Appreciate it, Linda. Thanks very much. So, so here's another interesting presentation from this woman, Harriet. Harriet McFeely. Now, if you ever get to, where does she live again? It's in Nebraska. She has a Bigfoot museum in Nebraska. Look it up. This book was about Garrison, Nebraska, where they had. Oh, so here, by the way, here's some more examples of the horse braiding, which is something to think about. She put together this very interesting book. Where was her museum again? I can't remember. Well, anyway, she did this study of a place called Garrison, Nebraska. It's west of Omaha. It's a tiny little town of 200 people. It's in a square shape. This was what she showed us, which was really strange. The flag. They had this flag they'd been using for 30 years on Memorial Day. A lot of the people there were veterans, and they're very, consistent in putting up this same flag. And then one night they came back, and it had been braided and knotted from the top of the flagpole. The winds were only 13 miles an hour that night. It was ripped across laterally like this, and it was really knotted. You could see it. See those knots at the end? Now, they took it to the police. Police said it was the wind, but there wasn't enough wind to do that. And if you've ever seen things it takes a lot of wind to tear things consistently, not 10 miles an hour, some real gusts. I've had it happen to things that I have, but they never braid themselves or put themselves in knots. When Harriet started investigating the town, she found people had been having lots of weird experiences with things like this for years, and no one had ever talked about it, right? And so it was a very, she was going on with this, and you're thinking it's the flag and so forth, but then it's braided, and then there are many other flags across the U.S. that have appeared like this. Now, if you'll remember from Skinwalker Ranch, which just you guys were discussing, there's a new episode of Skinwalker Ranch starting in a couple days. Do you remember that incident where the wires were stripped from the cameras, and they couldn't see anything doing it with the camera that was still working, but there was obviously something that climbed up that was invisible, that was pulling out the wires and cutting them in interesting ways. What they found in Garrison was that there were other structures that had been braided, including tree trunks. On nights where there were no wind, the branch would be down on the ground and braided. And then the reason she wrote this book, and I haven't had a chance to read it, is there were other encounters like this throughout the town going back a long time. So this is what I'm wondering, folks. Is this a phenomena? Are we dealing with the phenomena of human silence around these events that we talk about on this channel, and others who are here in the chat talk about on their channel? You know, sort of like Thomas is here in the chat. He has his own YouTube events, and I was featured on one of them not too long ago. UFO man, all that. But is this more pervasive than we're willing to talk about because it's so hard to describe? Is it possible that are invisible creatures out there that like to play around with our flags, and not as a form of vandalism? What she said is this could mean to them some sort of unity between us. And we don't know what this means. I mean, perhaps there's a conventional explanation. I'm not totally against that, but what is this? Tight knots at the end of a flag that's been up for 30 years on and off. All of a sudden one night it's just shredded like this. Not enough wind. And the earliest case they found of this goes back to 1917 from Washington, D.C. Any case, Harriet put together, and I like books like this that are put together by ordinary people, self-published, A Walk on the Weird Side, Nebraska. Did you ever think that Nebraska had weird things going on? I bet these things happen everywhere. And we don't hear about them, folks. This is what it is. It takes investigators to really dig in. You find people have these experiences. So what does this mean? Remember when Ingo Swann, when I visited him in his building, he said, they're not weird experiences, you know. They're normal. That out there, that's subnormal. This could be normal reality. Interdimensional humans. Creatures that can become invisible, climb to the top of flagpoles and braid the knots, just like they saw at Skinwalker Ranch, right? And it's our culture that insists on not talking about it. This just could be reality, folks. This is the simian view. It's an interdimensional reality. Now, if you don't like that, find a multiverse where it just doesn't happen. But in this multiverse, it's interactive. That's what I think it is. And these things can show up and disappear. In any case, I haven't had a chance to read this, but look at this. Here's an example where they think that Gimlin-Patterson footage, that famous footage from 1967, Patty, there's some braids in their hair. This is what they're saying. It's very interesting. Could be. How do we really know? Any case, I just saw, here, look at this. Now, you have to check out the Ron Moorhead. If you haven't heard the Sierra sounds, folks, Bigfoot talk. I'm not kidding. And here's Ron Moorhead was out there, and they recorded these sounds, and it's on YouTube. You can look up Sierra sounds, and it's this what they call samurai speak. It's a weird type of backward Japanese sounding language. Bigfoot apparently can speak whatever language the humans around them speak. They can speak English. They can speak it so well you wouldn't know. They apparently can imitate any animal out there, and people have reported them imitating their dogs when their dogs were inside, imitating other family members when the family members were inside. Moms say they sound like their kids, but the kids are in here, or they sound like the mom, and they're in the house. So when you hear something in the forest, it might not be what you think it is. Ron Moorhead and another fellow recorded those sounds in the 70s in the Sierra Mountains. It's just a very, I'm not going to play it now. You can listen to it. It's very, he's trying to imitate the Bigfoot, and it makes all these types of complex sounds that our vocal apparatus cannot make. So it's just very interesting stuff. So anyway, I found Harriet's presentation very interesting. She just focused mainly on this one town in Garrison, but it's just interesting that when she started asking people, have you had any weird experiences in Garrison, she got these other stories from people that, you know, are challenging to our sense of what reality is. So another fellow this is really interesting fellow here. Let me show you this. This is Kenny Collins. Kenny is from the Estes Park area. He told us a very interesting story. He's someone that wants to interact with Sasquatch. He's been going out to areas near Estes Park where there's been reported activity. And as I learned, it's all up and down the Rocky Mountains from New Mexico to Canada, all the way up through Canada to Alaska. He said, Kenny told us, he was out by this rock quarry where he believed they were, and he'd been going up there a lot, even taking his little dog, just so they knew he wasn't a threat. And he was looking at this juvenile Sasquatch, he said, looking over the rock. He had a camera around his neck. He was just raising the camera, looking through the lens. They're looking at each other, and the next thing he knew, he was back in his car starting the ignition. Had lost time. So, again, it reminded me of Leah's description. But if you read any of these books, I'm reading Where the Footprints End, volumes 1 or 2, by Timothy Renner and another author. This loss of time has been reported by many people. It appears that the Sasquatch, not only can they zap our batteries, and when I asked that question, Jim Myers from the Sasquatch Outpost, who also gave us a short lecture, said they had a case when they were out there looking for a certain area where 3 trucks couldn't start when they got back. 3. In any case, Kenny Collins said that he doesn't know what happened. One minute he's looking, and the next minute he's back in his car, starting the engine. Fascinating stuff. It's like missing time. Just like we hear about UFO and ET encounters. What is going on there? Is this a symptom of some sort of interdimensional contact? Again, is this a type of interdimensional human that has psychic abilities like PK? That they can project onto the human that you don't even know what they're doing. The next thing you know, you've lost a couple hours. I've read cases of people losing hours of time out there. So you want to be a little cautious if you go looking for this life form, because, you can get disoriented or you can lose consciousness. Or the next thing you know, you're back in your car. I can't explain it. But he gave another example where they're out there in Bailey at night looking for Sasquatch. They had a Native American guy with them who was drumming, and he started to feel confused, like he couldn't remember these drum songs that he knew very well. And Kenny held up a picture of a ball of light that they saw come out of the trees. He said a Sasquatch, they had night vision. He didn't have a camera on it, but he had night vision. Sasquatch dropped out of the ball of light, and then a younger Sasquatch came up and went into the ball of light. So what is that about, folks? It is, it's very strange. Now, if we go back to Tesla, balls of light, exotic vacuum objects, I'm not going to talk about that too much right now, but it's all connected. Do you see? I'm going to suggest here that it's possible that there is a life form out there that knows how to work with ball lightning, exotic vacuum objects, and coherent matter, and that we were the ones that forgot. How do we know there isn't a type of human that learned how to do this thousands of years ago and still knows how to do it? They would have cloaking, invisibility, super high speeds, levitation. A lot of these phenomena that we associate with Bigfoot are associated with exotic vacuum objects, micro ball lightning, the cameras failing. I think you see where I'm going with this. If there was a life form on the planet that had learned how to harness what we call cold fusion, LENR, low energy nuclear reaction, a long time ago, if it's a natural phenomena to the universe, condensed matter that becomes coherent, a coherent ball of energy, a so-called Bose-Einstein condensate. Maybe there's life forms on our planet that learned how to do this, and they know how to do things that we can't do. And they would be in a parallel reality to ours. It's just a possibility, and it would fit in with UFOs. Why are there so many Bigfoot sightings associated where people are seeing UFOs at the same time? Or people see these Bigfoot coming out of UFOs. Maybe these are all types of life that know how to harness exotic vacuum objects, Bose-Einstein. It's a big topic, but this is where I'm sort of headed with this, is there's other civilizations around us on the planet that are more technologically advanced, and we don't see them most of the time. And sometimes they come into our reality, and we're the ones that are the primitive ones because we don't know how to do this yet, right? They can move up and down the timeline. They have a huge amount of energy available to them. And we know that this types of ball lightning has a light mode and a dark mode where it goes invisible. It's just a possibility. So this is sort of one of the things I'm looking about. So anyway, perhaps these are life forms that can do this. Yeah, it's just all related. It's just possible that we're the ones that forgot how to do this, and we're rediscovering it. There's this feeling that nothing that science ever discovers, nature hasn't already figured out how to do. Whatever you hear people inventing, nature's already doing it somewhere, or it wouldn't exist. And if nature's doing it, it serves a function. How about if there are humans or other life forms on the planet that can harness these processes now? They would appear to us as UFOs. I'm not saying that explains the whole phenomena, but there could be indigenous life on the planet that's more technologically advanced because of this type of Tesla ball lightning and all the types of energy. You're talking about something that's one coherent big particle. That one coherent, all the little particles become one coherent particle. They're all at the same frequency, and it can do things that ordinary matter can't do. It can deflect all types of force and do things that we would consider to be science fiction. This is one possibility. Hey there, Sleuth. Better late than never. Thanks for being here. Yeah, so Thomas says the ancient terrestrials. I think that's what we're dealing with. You know, Thomas, some people call it ultra-terrestrials. I think it's real. Think about it. They wouldn't appear to us all the time. They just pop in and pop out. Why bother to deal with it all the time? They're thousands of years ahead of us technologically. They would just show up once in a while. They're in a parallel stream. I think that's what we're talking about with Bigfoot personally. Why? The glowing eyes. Why do you get these reports? When I was talking with Mike, I showed you the picture of Mike who had the experience in, here, near Drake, Colorado. I'm just talking. Actually, there were some people from Lakewood. I said, there's this case in Drake, and they weren't that interested. And I turned to this guy and I said, do you know about that case in Drake? And he goes, yeah, I was the one who experienced it. And he said they have you can see Bigfoot eyes as it gets to be dark, popping out here. They've seen them with night vision, and it's always two eyes. The eyes give off light. This has been reported so many times. Now, what creature has eyes that give off light? The way we think about it, the eye is a receptor of light, but Bigfoot eyes are luminous. You can either see them or see them with night vision scopes. Eyes that glow. They glow different colors. What does that sound like to you? To me, that sounds an awful lot like microball lightning or some creature that's learned to harness this. Sometimes people report the entire body of the Bigfoot glows. This is an animal, human, probably an advanced human, that knows how to harness this. Now, all the hair on Bigfoot, what does hair generate? Static electricity. That static, if it's separated by a layer of insulation we call fat, just moving around would be generating energy that could become a coherent ball of light and create luminosity. Anyway, it's just an idea, guys. So, teleportation, as Wild Sense is saying. This is what I'm talking about. This could be like what Ingo Swann said to me. It's all natural. It's just that we forgot, folks. We forgot, but we're relearning RV and all these other things I've been involved with. It's just relearning stuff that we knew how to do that somehow, as Linda was saying, by the way, at the beginning of this broadcast, Linda Perez, who's saying this, it's sort of been, we've been dumbed down through our industrialization. We've gained some skills. We can have this modern technology, but we've lost other natural technologies that nature already built in to us. That seems to be the case of what's going on. So let me just see anything else I'm going to tell. So in the conclusion of this conference, we had Jim Myers, who runs the Sasquatch Outpost. He said he's been doing this for about 10 years. He didn't intend to do this. It's people, when he started opening this store, started reporting this. It wasn't like he intended to open a Sasquatch museum. Just the reports came in. As you can see from his slide here, eyeshine, it's mentioned there. Mind speak, telepathy, healing of illnesses. This is another fascinating case that Jim told us about. I heard him talk to the Boulder Exo group in a Zoom conference a couple of months ago. There have been people who've reported spontaneous healings by being around Bigfoot. Not all of these encounters are always creepy or scary. They can be. There's obviously a whole range of Bigfoot. It's like the good, bad, and the ugly, as Don Monroe told us. There are all types. We shouldn't fantasize about it that they're all like Chewbacca. Apparently, some of them are friendly. Some of them create these healing. There was a report of this woman who got healed of cirrhosis of the liver overnight on one of these all-women Sasquatch camping trips in the Bailey area. The doctor apparently said, what did you do? And she said it was a Bigfoot. The sounds tapped the sticks. He said, that's good enough for me because it's impossible. That'll work for me. And she never came back. Her stomach completely flat, liver healed, everything. So there have been reported, just like UFO encounter, ET people get healed. It's been reported. So this is just a big phenomena. It deserves a lot of careful study. And let's see, anything else that I want to share with you from the conference. Anyway, it just was fascinating to see all these different aspects of the phenomena. It's very diverse. And it's fascinating, I think. It isn't something that even would have been on my radar a year ago. I knew about this, but it just wasn't something that was so close till I realized it's happening around here. It's better to probably, if you go out looking for these beings, you should probably do it with other people because the effects are unpredictable, and we certainly don't want to. By the way, David Paulides was there at the conference too. He kind of kept a low profile, but he came to the conference from wherever he lives just to hear about this, which kind of shows us how important this is. I just started looking at his Missing 411 documentaries, and he does suggest, he doesn't say it directly, but he brings Bigfoot in. Now, some of these Tom Lyons stories, these presentations that I heard about here, I'm just skimming the surface. Unfortunately, Jules asked me, was this going to be recorded? This was not recorded officially. I'm sorry it wasn't recorded. These were great presentations, but there were no video cameras. This was a real basic conference. But these were all mostly friendly encounters, but sometimes they don't always seem this way. Sometimes people feel like they're being hunted by Bigfoot, I'll be honest. And I don't know enough about it to know why there's so much variation, especially in places like Glacier where people go way back in the backwoods there and they encounter hostility, something that really scares them, and they run out of there. Jim did report some of this happening around Bailey, the Lost Creek Wilderness area, where he has found abandoned tents that people said it was so scary, the whooping sounds by their tent, they ran. They left everything. He would go up the next day and find all their stuff. He said in some cases the tents were 10 feet up in trees. The whole campground had been just taken apart. And we've heard about this happening in Glacier 2 from these park rangers who quit, by the way. They just get out of there really quick and run for a couple days to get back to civilization. And when their tent's found, it's completely shredded. I wonder if it's braided. Shredded. So I'm not going to pretend, I'm not going to put icing on all of this. This is an unexplored area of our interaction with nature and these interdimensional humans. As Jim basically included this at the end, that what we're dealing with here are a type of interdimensional being. It's just not, as we're saying, an undiscovered wood ape or a type of Neanderthal that's still, it's some interdimensional being. And this is fascinating, folks, to go to a conference where they come to this conclusion. Now, when I was talking with Igor Bortsev at the end of the conference, here he is again. When I was talking with Igor Bortsev, just to sum this up, I can't quite, let's see, is this going to make it bigger? Yes, maybe a little bit. When I was talking with Igor Bortsev again, I said, are you familiar with the ideas in physics from quantum mechanics of parallel realities, going back to Hugh Everett? He's someone with a PhD. He might have heard about this. Igor being on the right there, and Don Monroe on the left. Both are fascinating to talk to. Again, this is what you can do at live in-person conferences you can't do on Zoom so easily. I said to Igor, are we dealing with parallel realities? And he paused for a second and said, it's quite possible. This is something has to do with parallel realities. And so to sum it up, folks, before I just get to your questions, or if anyone wants to call and ask a question live, I don't see all these phenomena as separate. Call me. See, I'm desperate. Give me a call. I don't see all these phenomena as being separate. And it's all different aspects of reality. And there's a lot more life out there than we were told. That's what I know. By our culture, by school, by science, formal science. There's much, much more going on. So when I look at all these phenomena from RV to PK to what I've seen in crop circles, battery failure, that goes around UFO encounters, battery failure, camera failure, ET encounters, loss of time, loss of consciousness, Bigfoot encounters, battery failure, camera failure, loss of consciousness, loss of time, glowing eyes. These are all different facets of parallel realities that can bleed through to our reality. And perhaps the Bigfoot is in our reality, but just invisible most of the time. These Bigfoot seem awfully good at speaking English. And that must mean that they're listening. Sometimes, though, they speak the way TV shows we grew up in the 70s. They say things to people that we wouldn't talk that way anymore, but it might have been popular in a show in the 60s. It's like they're standing outside listening to people's televisions. I don't know any way to explain it. They might be here all the time and invisible, or they might be in a parallel reality sometimes and come over to our reality. I don't know. But to me, these are all different aspects of the same topic, and it's really fun to explore it with all of you. So any questions? Let's see. We had some good... Okay, Linda's question. This is an interesting aspect of the phenomenon, Linda. Thanks for bringing this up. There are different footprints from Sasquatch. They're not all... they are not all these... Let me see. I marked the page here again. I just got these books yesterday, so... Oh, there's more of the braiding there. Isn't that cool? What does that? And why do the horses stand still? People say when they cut these braids out, they can't even get the horses to stand still. So, but look at this. There's a great footprint at the end here. Yeah, look at this footprint. This is from, again, from Ron Moorhead. Look how, there's his foot. And there's the, huge. So, they're not all 5-toed. Some of them are 3. Some of them are 4. Some of them look like bird footprints, you know? The way why, we don't know. It's just different types of feet, which means there's different types of big feet. And they don't all look like a cross between a human and an ape. I was reading one of the Tom Lyons, Bigfoot Frightening Encounters. He has a number of volumes. He claims, and I can't attest to this, people sent him these stories, and they seem pretty realistic when you read them. People don't want to use their full names or anything, but someone described, I believe it was the Willow City Loop in Texas. You can look it up on the map. I did. A beautiful, 10-mile loop that you can drive around a place called Willow City. I believe it's north of Houston. Is that right? Yeah. So, they described the Bigfoot looking like a cross. What they saw, they didn't know what it was, a cross between an ape and a cat. Now, what is that? Again, all these different types of species and animals are, to me, possible parallel reality entities. It isn't just ape-human. It could be ape-cat. What? They didn't even know if it's a Bigfoot. What is that? It kind of stands up and then it's huge. Runs on 4 legs. Came out of the canyon there, the Willow City Loop. I believe that's it. So, it's a very complex phenomena, and it just, deserves very interesting. It deserves some real attention. And I guess what my point is, and this is what the conclusion of the conference is, it doesn't easily fit into any categories that we have. We want it to be a this. And apparently, just like in the UFO field, in the Bigfoot research community, there's this intense infighting about whether, if it's a this or if it's that, and the quantum Bigfoot versus it's just a very elusive ape, all of that. But it may not fit into any categories, and that's fine with me, because reality rarely fits into the categories that you had, and if it did, it wouldn't make any progress. We wouldn't make any progress. So, any case, folks, any questions before we call it a night? It's been an hour and a half. It's been great. It's been a lot of fun. So what is Linda saying? Interdimensional or not, there's communication. Yeah, there's some sort of communication going on here, and that definitely seems to be a theme here. People described at the conference who've had contact kind of a long-term relationship with these Bigfoot, and there have just been different examples of this where people had decades-long relationship with these Bigfoot families, and they never told anybody why they are just seen by one group of people and not others. It's hard to describe, but one other aspect I should tell you about that came up was the Sasquatch Genome Project. A number of years ago, I believe it was about 6-7 years ago, some biologists got together. They were independently funded with about $500,000, and they went out. You can look it up on YouTube, by the way, Sasquatch Genome Project. They have some very interesting film footage, of these Bigfoot walking with the night vision camera in the dark. A very good shot of, a daylight shot of one on video. And they concluded that the DNA was human female mitochondria and some other type of human, I believe, that couldn't be identified. So it was human mitochondrial DNA, which comes from the female side. Our mitochondria in our cells, the powerhouses, come from our moms. And the other rest of the DNA was some sort of, was unidentified, some sort of unknown species. And that's what some of the labs said. It seems like they were joking, is this a new species? So there's been some attempt to, they would get hair, blood, saliva, all sorts of stuff and collect it. So that's interesting. But again, it's very challenging. It doesn't really easily lend itself to the type of analysis we'd like to, one other phenomenon I should mention that goes along with this, the tree knocking sounds. They didn't get into this last night. By the way, the people there said they didn't detect that Sasquatch smells. You might have heard about this apparently horrible smell that they emit that smells sort of like rotting meat or vomit or something like this. Nobody knows what that is exactly, but the people at the conference said they hadn't smelled that. So I don't know why that's reported in some cases. They detected the Bigfoot not from the smell, which people have said, but from this sense, this just feeling like you're around another body. But the genome evidence is interesting. The tree knocking sounds, people have reported Bigfoot, and you can read about this. Just go search different people's books about this. This sound that they call the tree knocking sound. Apparently, it sounds like a baseball bat hitting a tree. If you hit, it'll answer back with the same number of knocks. But no one's sure if it's actually the Bigfoot slapping the tree or if they're clapping or making the sounds. After all, Bigfoot can create a lot of vocalizations, apparently. They can sound like a tractor backing up. They can make that beep, beep sound. People have heard this in the middle of nowhere where there are no tractors. They can sound like a car door slamming. Oh, what's that? They sound like a car door slamming. So we don't know what makes the tree knocking sound, but if you're ever out there and you hear this and loud and you answer back and it answers with the same, okay. So maybe it's, no. See what we learned, Thomas, last night. They're extremely clean. They spend a lot of time, people have seen them washing themselves in streams and things. They're very clean animals. Hygiene's very important to them, apparently. So let's see. So Linda was saying, comparing tracks with behaviors. Yeah, from the toe count. Oh, the more aggressive are the 3, 4-toed. Yeah. Who knows? Just use your sensibility if you go looking for these creatures. They may not be as far away as you think. I know that's kind of shocking sounding, but I suspect they're around. They just choose not to be visible a lot of the time. It's why they're so linguistically capable, why they can speak whatever language of whatever humans are around. And some of them do, again, David Paulides has suggested that, he suggested that this is what accounts for these missing people in national forests and national parks. I don't know. I mean, it's something that has to be considered. Again, people have encountered aggressive behavior sometimes too, but that didn't really come across from the conference. The people, I suspect, where they're used to seeing people more, they're used, the reactions are not as, unpredictable. That's the feeling I got. But still, you should use some caution because we don't know exactly what we're dealing with. So, yes. Been around for eons, but now society's learning that it's, Linda, that's kind of the way I see it too. Is like and I've said this recently in some interviews, it's like we're used to being the top dog in the food chain. Let's say it's not true. Let's say we're not the most intelligent species on the planet. Maybe the most intelligent species on the planet knows how to teleport, become invisible, create its own energy source, doesn't need houses, creates its own heat. It's just invisible to us, and we're less evolved in some ways. We're not less important in any way, but we're just not as evolved as we tend to think we are, right? That's certainly a possibility. So this is interesting. The sleuth, you're bringing this up. The electromagnetic side is very interesting to me. I've seen this around crop circles many times. People who've experimented with ball lightning have seen this happen in their labs. Tesla and John Hutchinson have had their transformers blow. Joseph Papp did this when he was giving a demonstration. Was it at Caltech? And Richard Feynman, remember the physicist, Richard Feynman, unplugged it from the wall, which was just there to ground the Papp engine, I think it was called. It was a Leonard cold fusion device. Richard Feynman went up, unplugged it from the wall. He said, this is just a hoax. And it exploded. And someone, I believe, was killed. And there was a trial, and Richard Feynman had to defend himself from charges of manslaughter. Paps told him not to unplug it. It was just grounding the energy. It was making a lot of energy. So this battery failure, camera failure, exploding I've seen transformers melt in crop circles, folks. It happened all the way back in 1997. Ron Russell put his camera down in the Daneberry triad formation. The camera wasn't filming, it was on, and it melted the solder joints. It didn't work. He had to send it back to Sony. It didn't work for the rest of the summer. It melted. That's the type of power you get from ball lightning when it comes apart. And, mini plasmas, basically. And they release a ton of current all at once. It's happened to Tesla, Pap, Hutchinson, and I've seen it happen in crop circles, and it appears to happen around Bigfoot. So what the F, right, guys? So yeah, this is real. This cold fusion Leonard is not inherently dangerous. There is some radiation release sometimes, but mostly it contains it. It's something that still has to be honed and fine-tuned. But to me, some of you wondered, Simeon, with the connection between all these phenomena, when I see the batteries, a camera failure in all these phenomena, from crop circles to Bigfoot to UFOs to EVOs to cold fusion, I'm thinking same phenomena. Now, I could be wrong, but that's how I think about it. It's the same phenomena working across all these phenomena, which means these different types of phenomena are interacting with this. And that's how it would appear to us, kind of going off Linda's comments. We're maybe not the most advanced thing around. Something more advanced would just kind of show up and go away, go away. Just, right? Like UFOs. Here they are, now they're gone. Circle around your aircraft carrier, your F-18. Hey, we're looking forward to the June report from the Pentagon. Are they going to tell us anything? We'll see. Anyway. So, yeah, no, these are all really good comments, folks. So, let me go back here and see anything else before we call it a night, guys. It's been quite a good hour and 40 minutes here. So, Sleuth wants to ask, could it be similar to the skinwalker phenomena? Yeah, this is what's being implied here. When we think of Bigfoot, we're thinking, ape-human hybrid, something like this. But we've heard about the skinwalker. It's been documented at Skinwalker Ranch. This idea of Bigfoot coming out of a ball of light, disappearing in balls of light. It was seen at Skinwalker, but it came out of a portal that showed up on the road, and something just huge stood up. They've never said exactly what it was. I talked to someone that was there when they were filming it with their night vision cameras. I'm not sure if it was infrared or if it was a night scope, but they implied it was a type of Bigfoot because it was so tall and so big, right? A huge human stepping out of a portal and the portal collapses. This has been seen over and over again. When I see evidence like this over and over again, that suggests to me, pay attention to this. What is going on here? We don't want to wait for society to catch up or science. It's slow. We don't have to wait that long. We have ways of getting information, communicating like this, and figuring it out, which we are. But yeah, it's a type of shape-shifting. And some people have gone as far even to suggest that Dogman, that other cryptid creature called Dogman, is perhaps a type of Bigfoot. We just call it Bigfoot. Perhaps it has a lot of different ways of expressing itself. We don't know, but if you look at the Renner books, where the footprints end, they go off in this direction. These are all perhaps the same type of creature that can change form. I don't know, Sleuth, but it's a good question. And that's what we need to think about. So, anyway, guys, this has been really interesting. Some great questions here. Sound like they're inhaling when they talk, not exhaling. Yeah, it's a very interesting speech. They have their own language. Now, Scott Nelson from the U.S. Navy, apparently a linguist, looked at the Bigfoot language. He said it's a real language. It's not easy to figure out, but it has its own structure. It has its own synaptic structure to it, morphology. It's a type of language. And from what I'm reading, there's different types of human languages in there, especially Hebrew. So how long have they been around that they can speak Hebrew? I mean, some of the words sound like Hebrew. It's strange, huh? Can you imagine going outside your house, your cabin, wherever you are, and hearing this sort of talking going on? People have heard it. So let me see. Anything else? Patrick says he's had some good... Have you heard them, Patrick? Have you heard these vocalizations? That would be really interesting. Again, I haven't encountered any of this personally, guys. This is just from researching, reading, and so forth. It's just another aspect of the unknown. It shouldn't be surprising that there's a lot of information we haven't talked about, we haven't heard about. Look how long it's just taking our government and the military to acknowledge UFOs. It's taken decades. And that's just, things that are happening around their bases, their missile sites, and their planes. What about everything else? I was just speaking with a friend earlier today who was in the Air Force. And he's actually in the Black Swan Ghost book. He had an encounter over North Dakota. And I wrote about it with another pilot when they were doing this triangulation exercise. I said, did you report it? He goes, who? Who are you going to talk about this to? Who are you going to report it to? Who are you going to call? Certainly not the higher chain of command. They're just going to think, they're going to try to silence it. And often there's no one who's going to take it seriously. That's the issue. That's why we've forgotten so much about this. So, now this is interesting, Sleuth. There are some cases I've read here. The Tom Lyons Glacier National Park Bigfoot book, where a guy said he would play music fiddle on his deck, and he saw Bigfoot gradually over a period of months come out and listen to him play. He would play in the early morning. They would come out and watch him. And eventually it kind of flipped him and his wife out so much they moved from that area, but he saw it. So they are attracted to music, and like a lot of animals are attracted. I found this being out in the woods when I play guitar. Animals like to show up. I imagine the Sasquatch, they appreciate the resonance too, so that's be an interesting way to communicate with them. So, yeah, Jules, I agree. I think they like music and singing, and they say music calms a savage beast. So it's probably good insurance policy to keep them calmed down, right? You don't want them carrying you off to wherever they're going to take you. There's been a lot of cases. I know someone who this happened to. It's challenging to talk about this topic. I know someone that said they were camping near Fort Collins towards the mountains, and something pulled them out of their tent about 30 feet at night. They couldn't see what it was, but it was big, and it just pulled them straight out of the tent. Better singing and dancing with them than people also reported when they're not sleeping in tents that they pick them up and they're racing to the forest until someone yells from their campsite and Bigfoot puts them down. I've also heard cases of someone who said it rescued one of their relatives when she fell off a horse in California. She was unconscious, and then she starts waking up, something big and hairy picked her up and moved her off the path where she could have been trampled by other horses that were coming through. So they rescue people too. And if you look at the literature, there are many cases of rescue where people have broken legs and arms, can't walk anymore. They're by loud streams or something, can't make enough sound, and something takes them back to safety. Little kids have reported this in Glacier, of having fallen in creeks that I'm aware of that I've hiked by, have been said they've been rescued by big hairy creatures that pulled them out of the water and dried them off and gave them a pat in the head and left. So very complex subject and behavior. It's just absolutely fascinating. So, yeah, there are cases of the females abducting males. That happens. So, who knows, guys? I might get lucky. This has been reported. I can't verify that these stories are true, but if you go back to Albert Ostman's story, isn't that his name, Albert Ostman, from 1924? I think he was a logger who said he was abducted and by Bigfoot, taken to their females. He said this. It's been reported this. So yeah. Yeah, it's just very interesting. It raises, so this is what it raises, and I think this is a good point, and I guess we'll end it on this. It suggests that there are these common frequencies of communication, and this is what you said earlier, Linda, which I agree with. It's a type of communication, and we're communicating with this other species of human, for real. It's one thing just to talk about this, but when you have talked to the witnesses like I did yesterday, you've read enough about it, but it's, we can read a lot of things. You actually talk to them in person. And people have been telling me these Bigfoot stories. I haven't shared them with all of you because I wasn't sure how to put the format together. I have witnesses on video, which I'll get their permission to see if I can share with you, of Bigfoot coming right up to their houses in Colorado Springs, psychically projecting their image before they heard the sound of them doing their whooping and screaming, those long cries that show very powerful lungs. They saw them in their mind's eye, and I've recorded this. I just wasn't sure how to. I've talked to so many Colorado Bigfoot witnesses. This is why I'm kind of telling you this now. I've been talking to witnesses for 10 years around here. I just couldn't fit the pieces together, but now that I can see it connects to UFOs and it connects to these strange energy phenomena, I can start sort of making sense of it in just my own way. I've been talking to these witnesses who've seen this activity, and who are you going to call? Where do you report this? I mean, there is the BFRO.net site. I'm told they don't report any cases where there are UFOs, right? And UFO researchers, there's some of you on the call, and they won't connect to Bigfoot. That's a separate topic. We're talking about ETs here. We're not talking about Bigfoot. Well, why do people see Bigfoot when they're taking these craft? Why do they see Bigfoot in the craft? I've been reading about this for decades. Why are they in the craft? Why do they see them dropping out of the craft? It's like a spectrum of life and consciousness, and it's just us. So what we're tuned to, that what we see of it, it's just a bigger spectrum of life. And we went into a zoo and we just saw zebras and elephants, and there's a lot more types of animals out there. It's still a big zoo, but we only saw one section of it so far as a society. There's just a lot more. That's what I'm convinced. A big spectrum of life, and we're getting clues to how it works. And I think together we're all sort of figuring this out. But these are real phenomena, and there's nothing wrong with seeking to communicate with it, contact. I think it's all fair game, and we should be. But just do it in a sensible, respectful, sincere way. Now, Linda, you put up a comment earlier. Let me go back to that about hunting and all this. Yeah, I'm a little alarmed. Like people that Congress, what was that guy, that representative in Oklahoma that wanted a hunting season on Bigfoot? Guys, this is a bad idea. They can retaliate. They have retaliated. We know about these disappearances of hunters in the woods. Paulides has talked about this. I would not want to antagonize this life form. Now, reports I've heard of people shooting at them. I've heard various reports. It's hard to say what's true, but so many of this, nothing happens. It doesn't do anything to them. I don't know why exactly. If they're an EVO, an exotic vacuum object, I would explain it. Everything's going to bounce off an EVO. It's such a tight energy form, you can't penetrate it. There are different reports, and you've heard of the cases where the people shoot at them and it makes a plopping sound, but nothing really happens. There's also cases of retaliation, and this might explain some of these disappearances. They might get sick of people antagonizing them when they see hunters out there. They might you hear reports of hunters disappearing, groups of hunters disappearing in forests. I've seen the billboards. I don't know. This is really hypothetical, but that could have something to do with it. So I don't think hunting them is a good idea. They can do stuff back. We don't want that relationship with them. We want to have a healthy, positive relationship with this species, just like we do with extraterrestrials. There is a negative side to this. We've had Terry Lovelace on the show. He was taken up with Toby into a triangular craft. There were medical experiments done. They were burned. Okay? We don't like it when they do that to us, right? Terry told me recently, he was on the show here, he said he doesn't feel hostile or he doesn't feel angry about it anymore. But how many cases have we heard where people have this type of experimentation done by ETs or wherever they are? It's not positive. And we certainly don't want to be encouraging that by treating the species. We don't want to give any justification for them to treat us like that. But if we treat them that way, we're going to get treated the same way. It says, fractals, hello, self-similar. So, in any case, I would be very careful about showing any aggression. I'm serious, based on what I know. There's some that seem to have experienced this from humans, and they don't like humans anymore, and that would be understandable, but they're going to take it out on humans for a while. And we should... I think a law should be passed that it should be illegal to hunt for them or anything like that. If they're a type of human, they deserve the same protections as any other human. That's my view on it. So, right. And this is why they choose to be elusive sleuth. I agree with that. I mean, we're a pretty violent species. Look at how we treat each other. It's just really incredible sometimes. So why would they want to show? Why would the ETs show up? Why would anyone want to show up when there is such a propensity for humans to feel violent towards anything they don't understand? That it's okay. I'm not even in favor of hunting personally, guys. Anything, all right? Unless it's directly for food, it's for survival. That's different. I'm not in favor of hunting for pleasure. I'm against this. That's just me, okay? But it certainly would apply to anything that's also a type of human, and that we need to evolve out of that if we want to be part of this larger community of life. Otherwise, we're hostile. They're going to be hostile. It's just what you give out's what you get back. Hello. So, in any case, well, these are great questions here, folks. Anything else? Not monsters, but neighbors. Yes. Yeah, guys. So anyway, thanks. Anyone want to ask anything else? Or ask a question online on the phone before we call it a night? Again, I appreciate you listening to all this. This is, again, very new information to me, but not totally new. I've been looking at this topic for a while. It's just realizing that it's happening very close by here from, seem to be very credible witnesses. You know how I know some of them are credible? They don't report it on the BFRO site, things that happened right around here in Boulder. For 10 years, they just don't want to be ridiculed now that they have their, the university, their PhDs. They feel that they can share it anonymously, but it takes them so long to even report it. And the people I've talked to who have encountered this too, sometimes it's kind of, you don't know what happened. It's a strange encounter. And there's a lot of reluctance to talk about it, just like UFO witnesses. So it would explain why people are reluctant to share this information. But now, it seems like it's opening up, and it would be really cool in our lifetime to make progress on this topic and to find out who the Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whatever they're called, who are they? And maybe they could show us how to be interdimensional. Wouldn't that be kind of cool? How to teleport. Sometimes they're seen like almost levitating into trees, or people say when they're jumping down from high space, it's incredibly athletic, and they come from these large, no injuries. How do they do that? It's just a good question. And wouldn't it be fun to have them around to have a conversation, to have them in on this call? We could, ask them, how do you do that? How do you make your eyes glow? I want to do that. Anyway. So Linda's saying, okay, you are here. Let's look at Linda's story. What's the last thing? It's 2 hours, guys, and it's pretty late for some of you. It's getting bedtime soon. You were in Steamboat Springs living 2,000 acres for 8 years. That's cool. That's a lot of property out there. And you had a pack of 10 wolves and many. That's cool. Livestock. And you knew the difference between every nature harmonic warning that could be given. Yeah, there's lots of... Again, that's it. It's just we're the ones that have gotten out of touch with nature. It's not surprising that we would repress this from memories and forget about it. So yeah, that's what... And people were talking about that yesterday. We're the ones that have sort of we've gotten out of tune. And this is something that's out there, and... to learn to be sensitive, what I call planetary intelligence. It's just being aware. There's other types of intelligence than just logical thinking. So Edward, thanks. Haven't seen you in a while. Thanks for being here. Bigfoot sightings and interactions at the East Ranch in Washington, right? Is it Washington where the East? No, I don't know, but I'm sure it's happened. It's now again, my view. This could be wrong. Is that once you open the interdimensional portals, different things can come through the wormhole, including the Bigfoot and the ETs. It's sort of the same process. Yeah, support groups so people can discuss their experiences. Yeah. And again, as I've always mentioned, it took until 1965 for even child abuse to become considered a real phenomena in the United States. Before that, doctor said it was just kids falling out of trees or bullies or something like that. No one could believe that parents would do that to their kids. It's a social process of acknowledgement, recognition, and it takes a lot of courage to admit that something's going on that you're not in control of. This is one of those things, and we don't like to admit we're not in control, but this is something that we're not in control of, and we are having these sort of random interactions. It seems random. And I guess, folks, because of the internet, we can have sites like BFRO.net, which had that, I showed the Drake case from. They have many cases. If you go to BFRO, and I'm not affiliated with them in any way, you can see every state. Jules and I and some others were talking about that case in Florida recently, not too far away from Jules, apparently. Eglin Air Force Base, was that it? There was some video of something really tall and pretty fast moving along there. There were 2 sightings in that area over a period of a couple weeks, I believe. And the BFRO site has that. Now, because of the internet technology, this information, it's so accessible. So we have a lot of tools available to us. And this is, again, I guess to sum it up, let's see. Night camera IR. Yeah, but this is not IR cameras. We're talking about night scopes that just received, that don't emit light. That's right. So some people have said eye shine is from the camera, or humans don't have eye shine. These are emitting light. You can see with a night scope that doesn't emit any light. So remember what Hal Puthoff told us at the 2018 SSE IRVA meeting? There's so many sensors around picking up UFO data, it's getting hard to deny it. Satellites, carrier groups, Spy One radar, more and more advanced technology. You can't hide UFOs anymore. There's too much evidence. We're told even in this report that's coming out in June that is supposed to be received by the Senate Intelligence Committee that the National Geospatial Imaging, it's something like the NRO, but it does the satellite work for the Department of Defense, that they have to release their information too. How much is there on satellites? It's just really good. So I think the same thing is happening. This is why the Bigfoot topic, Sasquatch, is coming up now too. There's more and more ways of sharing stories. It is a little surprising that somehow the Patterson-Gimlin film is still the best video, apparently, that we have. There are other videos, though. You look on YouTube, some interesting stuff. It's always hard to tell. But you see these pictures people have taken. It looks awfully interesting. But we get to share these stories, communicate, and it's speeding up. I think the whole thing is speeding up. It's sped up for me. This is certainly not a subject I would have imagined talking to you about even a year ago. So again, Edward, the red eyes they're not always red. They're different colors. They change colors. They emit light. Some people say they're as big as ping pong balls emitting light out there. And Jim Myers from the Sasquatch Outpost showed us these yesterday, and at the Zoom presentation he did the Boulder Exo group a couple weeks ago, which is on YouTube, by the way. Look it up, Jim Myers Boulder Exo presentation. When they zoomed in, each light was 2 eyes, 2 groups of 2. He said there were like 15 of them around their campsite, and they could see them with the night scope. So. Yeah, so that's what I was thinking about this today, Edward. Is why would they do that? And I was thinking they're projecting one frequency and it bounces. It's like their own type of night vision, right? They're projecting light and then they're receiving at another frequency back or something like that. So it's like their own type of night vision. So yeah, I think that's a very good observation, just like you're saying, Sleuth. They project light. Well, they're luminous fish and things that do the same thing, right? Down in the ocean. Phosphorescent fish. Remember the one that dangles that little light in front of it? Stuff like that to attract other fish. So you might give off light to see what's going on around you. I mean, in any case, I don't know about Mothman. Maybe Mothman had these eyes too. And Sleuth, I have to be honest here. I mean, I read Mothman a long time ago as a teenager. You know, just it's one of the books I just saw. I got interested in it, and you wonder what is there a spectrum of these cryptid type animals, and they are real, and they're not all that common. Some more common than others, but these things exist, and sometimes they show up. It's a really good question. I think the evidence is there, and I don't think these counter explanations work any better than saying that the Tic Tac was just, what did that guy say in the New York Times? Neurological overload, ice crystals, and he had some other counter explanation for the Tic Tac. Neurological overload. Well, I'm feeling a little neurologically overloaded these days. How about you folks? Bioluminescence, yes. So anyway, folks, I think we've had a great talk. It's been over 2 hours, and I appreciate all of you showing up. So I might have forgotten to mention some things, but that was the basic idea. I wanted to give you a summary of this. It was my first Bigfoot conference. It was only an hour away in Bailey, Colorado, and it was fascinating. And it was great to meet a lot of local people. Some of them did not want their names used, so I didn't share them tonight, who've seen this, interacted with it. So here's what I think is going on, just to sum it up. I think there are a lot of local interactions with these cryptids, including Bigfoot, and people aren't talking about it because they feel like it's a special relationship they have with them in their backyard, in their neighborhood. Maybe they're feeding them. Again, Jules and I had this discussion last night on Twitter. I mean, if they're interdimensional, why are they building structures? And we don't totally know. Why do they eat deer and other animals? People have seen them carrying deer a lot. Is perhaps when they're physical, they need to eat like we do. It's just a lot of questions, and they're good questions, and we'll have to look into it. So, swamp gas! That's what I think Mothman was. It was swamp gas. Oh, yeah. That was, guys, I've been reading about Dexter, Michigan. Hynek pulled that. He just made that. That was from the 1860s. Someone mentioned swamp gas. They were going back to such a long time ago. It's ridiculous. Swamp gas. That's what it is. So, folks, be careful of that swamp gas out there. Stay safe. Thanks for joining me. And we will see you again soon. Take care for now. And bye. Here we go. Wait a minute. Okay, our theme song disappeared. Wait a minute. Let me see if I can get it back. Here it is.